I'm a psychiatrist. Let's just start it out. How's your mental health? Because today I want to talk to you about that next ladder in the rung of your mental health. Now, some of us are still working on mental health 1.0, but I'm going to ask everybody from now on to be thinking about what is mental health 2.0 for you. And we just think about it for a second. What is mental health? Like, what does that mean to you? Think about it in your mind. What are the components of mental health? If we want to improve our physical health, oh God, like I want a six-pack. If I want a six-pack for the beach this summer, we've got lots of ways. Everybody in this room knows a bunch of ways to work on your abs and your biceps and to work on your physical health. But what do we do to work on our mental health? Especially for the students in the room, the biggest challenge that you're going to face in terms of your health over the next decade is your mental health. How your brain works, how you think, how you relate to one another. And so I wanted to spend some time with you this morning, and thank you all so much for having me here. It's just a pleasure to be back in the Midwest, back in my hometown, or homeland, so to speak, speaking about mental health. Something's changed in the last decade. When I first started giving talks and speaking with the public a little bit, we didn't talk about those words like depression or anxiety so much. We'd say like depression. And now we talk about mental health. So I want to share with you a few of the things I've learned about how to feed your brain, because your brain is really the seat of your mental health, but also to encourage you to think about mental health 2.0 for you. What can you do in each and every day to improve your mental health? For all of us, that's a very personal question, and I hope that you'll ask that question. We think about your intention in 2020. I hope part of that is thinking on and focusing on your mental health. And so, mental health, what has food got to do with it? Well, mental health is a brain health phenomena. And we think so much about food in relation to our body, but we really are just now starting to think about mental health in relationship and brain health in relationship to our food. Because so much of what you eat, as I hope to show you over the next few minutes, relates to how you feel. Now, just very quickly, my disclosures. I'm an author, so about diet books, you should question almost everything I say. A little bit's with skepticism. I'm not going to prescribe kale to everyone. A few of you, I will probably be prescribing kale to. I'm on the editorial board of Medscape and also of Men's Health, and I'm not going to talk about any medications. I just have to give these disclosures as a physician. This is where I'm from. This is our family farm down in southern Indiana. I grew up in Crawford County. Crawford County is the poorest county in Indiana. I also like to point out we're the greenest county in Indiana, if you look at the Google map. About 2.5 years ago, my family and I moved back in with my parents. That's when you know that's the height of your mental health, right? We don't live in the basement. They allow us to live on the ground floor. And I moved back in part as I was seeking that mental health 2.0 question for myself. I was a busy New Yorker. I was working a lot. I felt like I wasn't seeing my kids. I felt like I wasn't in nature. And I felt like I wasn't as healthy as I should be. Now, that might seem like a strange next step, moving from Manhattan to Crawford County, but that's what I did. And for some reasons, I had some friends I wanted to spend time with, like these goats, Missy and Clover. It's a little strange. I go back and forth to New York. People ask me, what are you doing? I said, well, this summer I'm leasing some lactating goats, which is true. If you haven't spent time with goats on a farm or any ruminants, I would encourage you to, mainly for the reason, and it shares a little bit of how I think, that with all this debate about dairy, I thought, well, why not get a few goats and really understand dairy from the grass all the way to the milk. That's my dad, who just turned 80, and our daughter, Greta, who is about to turn 9. And something about being on the farm with my family gives me an incredible sense of peace. Now, living on a farm with your parents, that might not be mental health 2.0 for you. And I'm not sure it's the end of mental health 2.0 for me, but it was an intention that I set. Something drew me back there, a desire to be back with my family and back on our farm. Now, when we talk about, let me get my slide here. Maybe that is the next slide. So we talk about mental health, usually we're talking about mental illness. And this is a statistic you'll see a lot. 1 in 5 of us have a mental illness. And I've decided I really don't like this statistic anymore. Because that means that mental illness or mental health struggles, or as I call them in my practice, mental health challenges, that's something like those other people have, right? That 20%, the 1 in 5. And I don't think that's true. I sit in my office in New York City and I listen to everyone from teachers and plumbers to celebrities and wealthy folks, and I hear the same kind of concerns. A question about who we are, what our lives are about, how we process our feelings and emotions, how we relate, how we love. I kind of think that 5 out of 5 of us have mental health. 5 out of 5 of us have brains that we have to take care of. And what's most important is that 5 out of 5 of us are at risk. Mental health doesn't discriminate. Depression doesn't discriminate. Anxiety disorders doesn't discriminate. They come after all of us. And those diseases are terrifying because unlike what we often focus on, heart disease and cancer and diabetes, things that tend to hit people later in life, mental health concerns tend to strike us in our late adolescent years. These are the most productive and meaningful years in terms of our development. And that's why mental health disorders are the top cause of disability in America. They cost us about $1 trillion a year in lost income due to productivity. What's even more striking is because of stigma, that idea that if you think about me not as a physician and all this stuff, but you think about me as someone who's struggled with my mental health, it shifts things. And about 60% of people with mental health concerns don't ever get treatment. Most of you will never speak to a psychiatrist or a mental health professional. Maybe after today, I hope that'll change. Most concerningly, about 50% of kids never get treatment at all. And nothing derails life and a life trajectory like a mental health concern. So I want to share with you some ideas of how you can take care of your mental health every day. Now, by no means do I mean to say that food is a replacement for things like psychotherapy. I do a lot of psychotherapy. I've been in a lot of psychotherapy. Or medications. I prescribe lots of medications. I find them to be very helpful in lots of situations. But that shouldn't be what our mental health plan is about, right? Waiting until you're struggling. What can you do in your daily life to take better care of your brain? And that's what I want to speak about with you. Now, this is my premise, my question, the thing that I want you to be a little skeptical about. I'm going to share with you a lot of the evidence, which is how do you feed your brain? And if you make these choices every day, if you eat more leafy greens, more rainbow vegetables, if you eat more of those, these right here, these little brain nuggets that I'm selling on Amazon, I'm just kidding, those are lentils, I think. Can you build a bigger, stronger, more resilient brain? And more resilient, I guess, is the part I really want to focus on. Resiliency is our ability to bounce back because human life is very stressful. Maybe you've noticed that recently. It feels like it's gotten a little bit more stressful. And are there things that we can do in our everyday routine? Are there things that you can add to your wellness regimen that are going to take better care of your brain based in science? Let's talk a little bit about your brain. We focus so much on other aspects when we eat, but really your brain is the hungriest part of your body. Just about 3 to 4 pounds. Depends, mine's like 2.5 pounds now. Your brain consumes more food than really any other part of your body, about 1/5 of all the calories you eat. Just think about that, 420 calories a day. Now, when I go to the gym and I get on the treadmill and I'm like running and I'm running and I'm running, and it takes a while to burn 420 calories. But that's what your brain is doing every day. About 60% of all of the glucose that you eat, it's 60% fat. Your brain is made of fat. Kind of makes you wonder about that low-fat movement we had for a long time. When you eat a low-fat diet, you're actually missing several of the most important nutrients for your brain. And PUFAs, those are called polyunsaturated fatty acids. That's a mouthful, but when you hear these phrases like omega-3 fats, those are critical molecules for your brain. And you only find them in a few food sources. Your brain is also full of cholesterol. Cholesterol is one of those molecules that got a bad reputation, right? That's the kind of thing we're supposed to avoid. But it's really fascinating to think that the most complex biological process going on inside of you, your consciousness, all those electrical signals that are passing along in your brain, they depend on these really specialized fats that are made out of cholesterol. Other things come out of cholesterol, like vitamin D. You make that out of cholesterol. Or sex. People like to think about sex. Well, just to kind of think about where all those sex hormones come from, estrogen, testosterone. You know what those are made out of? They're made out of cholesterol. I'm not saying you should eat lots of cholesterol, but just to emphasize, a lot of our notions about what we eat a low-fat, low-cholesterol diet, really has nothing to do with the most important organ that you have. I mean, if you woke up this morning thinking like you're in need, you want something, there's something you're looking for, there's something you're hoping for, I'd ask you to reconsider. You've already got it. You've got the most amazing thing known in the human universe. You have a human brain. Its potential inside of you is incredible. Your ability to be creative, to energize people, to empathize with people, to realize your own hopes and dreams, that is all centered in your brain. You've already got one. You've got it. You won the lottery. And so that's why I want to help you think a little bit more about how do you take care of that brain, because as much as it's amazing, maybe you've noticed it's kind of fragile. We've all had those days, right, where you wake up and it's just like, hello, it's not working quite right. You're foggy, or you're down, or you're worried. So what can you do to take better care of your brain? Well, the first thing is to reconceptualize what it is. A lot of times when I talk about mental health, people hear I'm a psychiatrist, people are like, yeah, serotonin. Serotonin's a great molecule, but it's like, it's not 1990 anymore, folks. We want to upgrade your favorite brain molecule, and I'd make the argument it should be BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. What that means is this is a molecule that we discovered, not me, but we in medicine discovered, that creates new connections in the brain. It allows the birth of new brain cells. When I finished medical school at IU down at Indiana University in the year 2000, we didn't know this. You went to medical school and they said, all the cells in your body reproduce except your brain cells. You got like 100 billion of those. Good luck. Hope you don't lose too many of them as you age, and that was it. And then there was this fascinating discovery of BDNF that said, actually, hold on a second, stop the presses. You give birth to new brain cells. That's just a fascinating concept. And of course, you give birth to new brain connections. How else do you learn stuff? Every time you're remembering something, that is a couple of neurons talking. So BDNF allows us to think about the brain as something that's dynamic. It's always growing, it's always changing. And then it leads to that question that we should all have: who doesn't want their brain to be growing? What can you do in your everyday life to kind of nudge your brain into what I call brain grow mode? That your brain is poised to grow, it's poised to learn. And we've done a lot to change food. Think about it, in the last 100 years, we've changed the human diet more than we ever have in 100,000 years. I was just in Japan for 2 weeks, and it's fascinating to be in a culture that's eating pretty much the same food, very different diet than we eat. What we've done, though, is we've shifted from whole foods, foods that everybody would recognize as food, stuff that grows in the ground, things that come from farms. And we switch over to processed food. You know, processed food, it always makes that sound, the crinkle as you're opening the package. That's processed food. We've increased our intake of sugar and refined carbohydrates. Now, everyone knows sugar is bad, right? It's the evil toxin. But remember, I told you a few minutes ago, your brain consumes most of the glucose, blood sugar, that you eat. That's sort of fascinating. Sugar has this bad word, but human consciousness is made out of sugar. But what we've done is we've changed the way we consume sugar, from carbohydrates that come from real plants to sugar and refined carbs. It's actually added sugars are one of the top sources of calories consumed by Americans. I have any teenage boys in the audience? Anybody up there? All right, so you guys and gals, all teenagers, statistics show us about 270 calories a day come from added sugars. And the problem with sugar, why is sugar such a toxin? Well, the problem is that sugar comes with no nutrients. It doesn't come with anything that your brain needs besides the fuel. It doesn't allow you to deal with all the waste products that your brain creates. We switched from animal fats. We used to eat a lot of lard and beef tallow, or not a lot, but some. Switching over to vegetable fats, things like sunflower oil, corn oil, and soybean oil. And as we've done that, we've shifted a ratio. We used to have a diet that was really based on omega-3 fats, and I'll show you some of those foods here in a few minutes, to a diet that's based on omega-6 fats. Now, there's kind of some deep brain science, but the basic idea is we've shifted over from a set of fats that your brain is made of, that are very anti-inflammatory, and have become to eat a lot of fats that people argue, and science tells us, are quite inflammatory. And then we added all this new stuff to food, right? We've got food dyes, we've got preservatives, we've got trans fats. When I was about a decade ago, Mayor Bloomberg outlawed trans fats in New York City. And I wondered, where do those trans fats come from, those evil molecules? And you see, we made them. Trans fats were created in 1912. We didn't have them before then. We put them in our food supply. And so one of the basic messages that I hope that you'll take from today is, as you look at your plate, is this food that everyone throughout history would recognize as food? Is it simple? Is it based on foods that you can name? Or are you looking at an ingredient list trying to decipher whether it's healthy or not? Or looking at the packaging where it says, "This is a low-fat, healthy cholesterol, vegan, gluten-free food." That's a big tip-off for you. You're making the wrong choices. All right, so we're here in Chicago, the land of deep dish pizza, and I want to just ask you, who is this man? This is the father of pizza. Anyone? Little history lesson. We have some students in the room. This is Christopher Columbus, and Christopher Columbus did some very fascinating things. When he was in the New World and he discovered the New World, it makes you kind of wonder, like Italian food, right? Italian food's based on what? Tomatoes, right? Red sauce on your pizza, on your pasta. It's kind of striking to learn that there weren't any tomatoes in Italy before Christopher Columbus brought them back from the New World. Sort of shows you how much we've changed food. I mean, you kind of wonder, like, what was Italian food back then anyway? Like pizza with white sauce? Christopher Columbus brought something else back. Actually, this is what he brought to his mistress. He brought her a cornflower. I tried to bring some cornflowers to my wife from the fields. We have a lot of them, but it didn't work out. Wasn't that impressed. But Christopher Columbus' mistress was very impressed with corn. Why? Well, corn was a New World food. They didn't have any corn in Europe, and it's a grass. Corn grew very easily, and everyone started to eat corn. So much corn, especially if you were poor, it became the staple of your diet. There was a little problem. Mr. Columbus forgot something. He forgot that all traditional cultures that were based on corn had always done something to their corn. They'd always let it sit overnight and soak in lime. Now, a problem began to exist. Maybe you've thought about this or heard about this in Transylvania. If you were walking around late at night, you'd begin to see some folks. Rumors began to spread. They'd have a little bit of blood running down the corners of their mouth. They'd be agitated and mean. They kind of didn't make much sense, and they were pretty scary. They looked kind of like this gentleman, a vampire. Now, this man is not a vampire. He looks like one, right? And if you met him late at night in Transylvania, you would be very terrified, thinking you'd found one. But this is a man with a disease called pellagra. Pellagra is vitamin B3 deficiency. When you don't soak corn in lime, you don't liberate vitamin B3. And you begin to eat a diet that's completely deficient in vitamin B3. And when that happens, you begin to develop severe diarrhea, thick skin, which is what pellagra means if you look on his hands. You don't want to go out in the sun, of course, because your skin is always hurting. You get demented, so you begin to not make a lot of sense, and then you die. A vampire. All to say that when we change our food and when we lose food traditions, we run the risk of doing significant things to our brain. This man isn't a vampire. He's simply in need of some vitamin B3. This kind of information led me to wonder why I wasn't asking my patients what they eat. I trained at Columbia, one of the top psychiatric institutions in the world. I treat lots of patients. I try to take very good care of them. And no one had ever told me to ask them what they eat, a really simple question. And so I started to. This was back in the day when cell phones had just come out, and one of my patients was a young, tech-savvy guy, and I said, "Hey, will you take a picture of everything you eat over the next 3 days? What do you all see up here? What kind of molecules?" So this is primarily glucose. Think about all of these simple carbohydrates, the bagel, the bun on that hot dog, the cookie, the pasta, the toast. I often tell people to eat the rainbow. And he says, "Well, doc, right here, I'm eating the gummy bear rainbow." Not the gummy bear rainbow. And think about it, if you're in my shoes, you're sitting in my office, you've got a young man with a severe depression, he's struggling in life. He too was living with his parents. He was in the basement, though. It was like battling World of Warcraft, Russian hackers online all night. People thought maybe he had bipolar disorder. He was agitated and irritable. Think about if he's eating this. You think that's making my job any easier? It's really not my job, it's his job, right? Is that going to help him get to mental health 2.0? I didn't think so. I'm beginning to wonder, what could we offer to patients in terms of nutritional guidance? As we've changed our food, this is what's happened. Now, these are some old numbers, 2009. I didn't want to depress you too much by showing you the new numbers, which are even worse. And look at some of these nutrients, like something like vitamin E. Vitamin E is a fat-soluble vitamin. Remember I said your brain's made of fat. And vitamin E is a firefighter. It sits inside that very, very specialized cell membrane of your brain cell, and it puts out inflammation. It's a powerful antioxidant. 86% of Americans in 2009 weren't meeting the recommended daily allowance. Actually, the most recent numbers show that 96% of Americans don't meet the recommended daily allowance. And then it leads to that simple question, and it's the question that I hope you'll leave here with some answers to. Where do you find vitamin E? Because I don't want you to find it in your multivitamin or in a supplement. I want you to find it in food. To me, that's always made sense. After all, when was the first vitamin discovered? 1912. And I think there was a lot of human happiness, human love, and human creativity way before 1912. It's great that we've discovered vitamins. If you need a specific supplement and you and your physician agree, great. But I think that our nutrition and your nutrients should come from food. Vitamin E comes from things like almonds and avocados and olive oil, simple traditional foods that people have always eaten. And by adding more of those types of food to your diet, you increase something called nutrient density. A lot of folks focus on calories, right? How do you eat to get fewer calories, maybe? And to focus on that simple way that maybe calories equal, losing weight. But really, the only reason to count calories is to figure out what's called your nutrient density. How many nutrients do you get per calorie? Kind of think about it as bang for buck. Think about a kale salad, right? Kale salad, 3 cups of kale, a little bit of olive oil has about 140 calories. Whereas something like a Coke, 140 calories, has no nutrients for your brain. Whereas that kale salad, that's going to have like 500% of your vitamin C. It's going to have about 2,000% of your vitamin K, about 800% of your daily need of vitamin A. And plus, it's going to have all these interesting phytonutrients, molecules that are found in plants that signal our cells to do things like fight inflammation. So nutrient density is a really important concept for you to think about. Because as you look at real foods, that's where you find it. That's why vegetables are such a great, great deal for you. Why everyone's saying to eat them, because vegetables have incredible nutrient density. Now, how did our human brain come to evolve? Just very quickly, and I want to tell you about some of the food categories that my clinic and I tend to focus on. The human brain is, again, made of fat. It got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then just got a little bit smaller and more concentrated. And when you look at where the human brain evolved, people say, evolved in the grasslands of Africa. Well, there's sort of a basic trend in biology. When you put mammals or any animal in a grassland, their bodies get bigger to digest and pull out the nutrients from grass, and their brains get smaller, like a rhinoceros. That's not what happened to us. What happened actually is we weren't in the grassland. If you look at the Horn of Africa, back in the day where the human brain evolved, it was a shoreline. In fact, they find all these what are called middens, these big deposits of oysters and mussels and the bones of small fish. And why is that? Well, one reason is that when we look at seafood, like all these seafoods, you find a number of minerals and a large amount of those long-chain omega-3 fats that the brain are made of. The human brain evolved eating small fish, clams, mussels, and oysters. And it leads to some simple lessons, because when you think about your dietary pattern, again, not whether you're a kale lover or not, but whether kale is one of the many nutrient-dense foods you eat, how much seafood is in your diet? When you think about the last 2 weeks, you eat any oysters, any clams, any mussels, any small fish? It's a simple way to keep track of one of the most important food categories for brain health. Now, I just want to share a little bit of the evidence that's come out over the last decade. This is reasonably new, maybe 10 to 15 years. A field's been developing called nutritional psychiatry. And nutritional psychiatry's goal is to help us eat better to better fuel and feed our brains. This is the first study ever published in the American Journal of Psychiatry. It followed over 1,000 women, looked at them at one moment in time, and found that the rates of depression and anxiety were highly correlated with what's called your dietary pattern. Again, looking over a week of eating and thinking, what's in there? What is your dietary pattern? Excuse me. They found that a traditional diet which are all those traditional foods, was correlated with a much lower odds of getting depressed or anxious. And a Western diet, the food that we tend to eat in America, increased your risk of getting depressed. An even larger study followed 10,000 university students in Spain, and I just wanted to share the raw data with you. If you look up here, this is the Mediterranean Dietary Pattern Score. And if you look on the far left of this, you'll see these folks who are eating in the top half of the Mediterranean dietary pattern, they have a drastically decreased risk of depression. The researchers ran this in 3 different models, and each of those models you can see there's between a 25 to 50% decreased risk of getting depressed, and this is a study that happened over 4.5 years. Now imagine if I had a pill and said, hey, with this pill, if you take it in college, I'm going to decrease your risk of depression by 50%. The most disabling illness in the world, the most disabling illness in America as of this year. Most people would think about giving those pills to their kids when they go off to college. And you kind of wonder, based on data like this, how powerful that college cafeteria could be. Adhering to traditional dietary patterns is one of the basic tenets of nutritional psychiatry, and it's data like this that have then led to randomized controlled trials. Randomized trials, those are the gold standard in medicine. It means we take a group and we do an intervention, and we take the same group of individuals and we do a control group. And what the SMILES trial found, this was published just 3 years ago now, actually almost exactly today. It was January 31st, I think, 2017. This is the first trial ever that used the Mediterranean diet to treat depression. They found that individuals who were already in treatment, in psychotherapy or getting some medication, were given a Mediterranean dietary counseling session, about 6 of them actually, and that they found drastically reduced rates of depression. About 1/3 of people went into full remission. Again, if that were a medicine, it would be the top-selling, blockbuster, billion-dollar earning medicine in America next year. These were the actual data I wanted to share with you. You can see the depression, the diet intervention drastically reduces depression when social support did just a little bit. All to say, we now have one randomized trial. Now, you'll always see this in medicine. One randomized trial doesn't mean anything. So then there was a second one. This was a Mediterranean diet cooking workshop. Now that would help my depression, right? If I was struggling, like, well, where are you going tonight, Ramsey? I'm like, oh, I'm going to my Mediterranean diet cooking class, meeting with all my friends. We got the olive oil, we got the anchovies, we got the broccoli rabe and the garlic. We're making good stuff. That would just, in and of itself, help me. But they found that depression scores improved by 45% in the Mediterranean diet group, and those changes lasted for 6 months. Now that is a very, very powerful set of data. And it leads to that question, what is the Mediterranean diet? It is one of the classic, you'll hear Mediterranean diet, right, for heart disease and for diabetes, one of the classic traditional diets. And if you think about your dietary pattern, because again, I really want this to resonate with you. I want today, from now on, as you sit at your table, you're thinking about feeding your brain. Does this make up the core of your dietary pattern? Is the main fat that you eat olive oil? Is your plate full with vegetables, probably 80% fruits and vegetables? Do you eat pretty much only whole grains? Not whole wheat, but like whole grains, things like farro, things like barley. And what about nuts? A lot of times when I tell people to eat more nuts, they're like, oh, nuts have lots of fat in them. Again, your brain is made of fat, and nuts are very, very nutrient dense, full of all kinds of great things for your brain. So think about your dietary pattern compared to this. Because in some ways, that tells you a lot about your risk for depression. But being an Indiana farm boy, when I said like Mediterranean diet to patients, people would be like, oh, you mean like Italian food? I ate some pasta, I got some pizza, I go get some Greek food, a little hero. And I kind of wondered, well, besides the Mediterranean dietary pattern, which can maybe be hard for some people to translate, what are the actual foods that have the most nutrients that we know fight depression? A colleague and I, Laura Lachance, created a nutrient profiling system. We looked at all of the scientific literature and found that there were 12 nutrients that were very, very at a high level of scientific evidence that they were involved in the prevention and the treatment of depression. If you added on things like vitamin E or B12 or the omega-3 fats, people who ate more of those tended to get less depressed. And that when people were depressed and they ate more of those, they tended to get better faster. This was the list we came up with. And what's very important about lists of food like this is that you think about what is your top recipe for emu and, goat. What's important about a list like this, and what I've learned from nutritional profiling systems, is that we want to think about food categories. You don't have to ever eat kale. Don't tell the kale mafia that I said that, but it's true. As long as you're eating leafy greens. I was speaking to someone out here who said, I don't like leafy greens. Like, oh, why not? So it's a texture issue. I don't like the crunch. Fine. You can saute your leafy greens. You can make a leafy green soup. You can blend it in your smoothie. You can mix it in with your pasta. There's all kinds of ways to eat leafy greens. But the top food categories that you see here, right, are oysters, clams, and mussels, right? If you think about this, I don't think many of you are going to leave here eating spleen and kidney, right? But the bivalves. You see seafood, you see wild meat, you see leafy greens, and rainbow vegetables. A little rhyme that I have to help you remember this. Seafood, greens, nuts and beans, and a little dark chocolate. It's a simple way. People laugh about the dark chocolate. Dark chocolate's a plant-based food. It's a fermented food. Dark chocolate's got the only molecule that's ever been shown to reverse age-related memory decline. It's not just a guilty treat. It should be a key part of how you feed your brain. Antidepressant Foods is this paper. It's available on PubMed. And it simply pushes the argument that there are foods that have more nutrients that feed our brain. Oftentimes, though, we get stuck in this kind of nutrient world, right? Our doctors tell us you should have more iron, you should get more B12. And what I hope that you'll do is you think about evolving as an eater. So you think about mental health 2.0 for yourself, that how can you translate those nutrients into food? Like, what's the top source? We're getting B12 injections out here. What's the top food source of vitamin B12? It's clams. I'm probably the first doctor that's ever told you clams are a superfood, I'm guessing. But they are. Clams are an incredible source of vitamin B12. Or things like phytonutrients, a nutrient we don't really think about, but those are what makes plants colorful. This is part of our Eat to Beat Depression course, which is simply trying to help people translate these important nutrients, things like zinc and B12 and omega-3 fats, onto your plate. That it's not about taking more supplements, it's about eating better foods. There's actually really not been a lot of data that supplements do a lot for us, but what does so much for us is when we change our dietary pattern. We don't just have the pharmacy, we have this farm pharmacy. And what I feel has become so clear to me as a physician and as a mental health specialist is that the more that you can engage with your food, the more you can think about food as something that is joyful, that is something that is improving your brain health, the better you're going to be in terms of your mental health. I wanted to talk about a couple of those food categories in detail to end. Now, seafood, you're going to hear me talk a lot about seafood because seafood is one of the most nutrient-dense areas of food that you can get into when it comes to things like the long-chain omega-3 fats. That's actually the only place that you find those in food. You also look at this, 6 oysters. Now, how many calories are in 6 oysters? Anyone? Come on, don't y'all count calories? Isn't that how we be healthy? 1 East Coast oyster has 10 calories. So this is 60 calories. Look at all the nutrition you get for 60 calories. Zinc. Zinc, you get 509% of your zinc. Now, zinc is one of those nutrients that's so highly correlated with depression. If you look at the meta-analysis, all of the studies agree. Populations that eat less zinc get more depressed. And when you add on zinc to an antidepressant treatment, people get better faster. Iron is absolutely critical for your brain to get enough oxygen, for you to have enough energy. It's one of those nutrients that highly, highly correlates with our ability to do things like make neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. And those long-chain omega-3 fats, 565 milligrams. Now think about that. If you take a fish oil pill, I want you to look and see how many milligrams of DHA and EPA, the two long-chain omega-3 fats that are so important, you get in that fish oil supplement. I doubt it's that many. So 60 calories. And again, that idea of nutrient density, right? Think about bang for the buck, what you're getting for those 60 calories. This is a clam pizza because I really love pizza and I like clams. And I found that a lot of people didn't have any idea how to eat clams. And I didn't really have a lot of clam game in my cooking either. Just a real simple pizza. It's a kind of pesto arugula schmear with some chopped up clams and garlic on it. One slice of this pizza has 245% of your daily need of vitamin B12. When you tell people to eat more fish, though, folks get concerned about mercury. And I just wanted to be very clear that if you eat small fish, if you eat bivalves, you can really not have any mercury concerns. The big concern is that people don't eat seafood. Actually, the FDA and the EPA drafted a statement 2 years ago encouraging pregnant women to eat 2 servings of fish every week. If you've ever tried to prescribe fish to pregnant women, the first thing they get concerned about is mercury. But I wanted to show you that this is just minor amounts of mercury, and look at all the omega-3 fats that you get. And again, think about your dietary pattern. Think about Mental Health 2.0. Well, who ate an anchovy last week? All right, a few of you. How about any bivalves? Mussels, clams, oysters? A few of you. Now, for maybe a lot of you, maybe some of the students in the room, you haven't tried those foods. I want to be clear with you. I didn't eat any seafood until I was 30. Indiana farm boy. To me, fish meant fish sticks, and the cafeteria smelled bad for like the whole week. But you can up-level your game. You can try things. You begin to add seafood. I eat every type of seafood there is today. Not because I forced myself to or I find it gross but good for my brain, but because I actually like it, because I've adjusted my palate and I've learned how to enjoy those foods. And I'd really encourage you, as you think about your dietary pattern, to think about adding more seafood. People say it's expensive. This was at the Whole Foods in Manhattan. $10 for a pound of salmon, and a pound of salmon feeds my whole family. And in that salmon are all of those omega-3 fats that are so good for my kid's brain, and I hope good for my brain too, although I'm getting kind of older. Maybe it's too late, but I don't think so. Seafood. Great food category. Next food category I want you to think about are leafy greens. People often just think that means a salad. That doesn't mean a salad. I mean, great, that's a great way to get leafy greens, but you've got your roasted Brussels sprouts. You can saute all these up. You can drop them in your pasta. All kinds of ways for you to get leafy greens. Again, why? Leafy greens have so much nutrient density. I did a lot of work with kale. We launched National Kale Day about 7 years ago and have helped feed thousands of people kale. I wrote 50 Shades of Kale with the idea of boy, if people just ate more kale, it would be really wonderful. And kale taught me a rule. If you're thinking about brain food, you want to look at a food and say, is this good for my brain? Focus on these factors. Does it have nutrient density? Kale has incredible nutrient density, but all leafy greens do. Is it give you culinary versatility? Come to my house, boy, you can have all kinds of different ways of having kale. You can have kale chips, you can have kale soup, we can have kale pesto. If you stay for the evening, I might make you a kale cocktail even. There's all kinds of ways to use kale. And then it's locally available. Anywhere you go in America, you can get a bunch of organic kale for $3 to $4. It lasts in the fridge forever. Just one of those things that you have in there as a staple of your diet. It's very easy to incorporate into all kinds of different foods. You can even make a kale cupcake. That's not how I'm recommending you eat your kale, but compared to your average cupcake, this one has a lot of nutrients. I want to talk to you about rainbows. Everybody heard that? Eat the rainbow? right? It's a great, great public health message because what rainbows represent, all those different colors, are these different flavonoids, these different pigment molecules. Maybe you've seen some of these up here, quercetin or hesperetin or epicatechins. That's what makes plants so healthy for us. Now, one reason I want people to eat fresh food is you don't find these in supplements. And also that these molecules we're understanding, we think about them as antioxidants. I want you to up-level that knowledge. It's not that they're antioxidants. You make lots of antioxidants in your body. It's that they're cell signaling molecules. It's so beautiful. They communicate directly with our cells, and they turn off the pathways that create inflammation, and they turn on pathways that fight inflammation, that tell our cells to keep going, to stay resilient. That's why the smoothies here in Eat Complete, I wanted to give a variety of colors, because I found in my own dietary pattern, I just go into that same go-to blueberry smoothie. Loved it. But I wanted to add in more colors, and so a kiwi smoothie, great. Or this one is a pumpkin spice smoothie. Keep hoping that the pumpkin spice latte movement will get usurped by the pumpkin spice smoothie, but still fighting that fight. There is a problem, though, with eating too many rainbows. Have you guys heard about this? I just want to be clear as a physician, everything comes with risk and benefits. You know about if you eat too many colorful vegetables? It's frightening. It happened to me once. It's a very strange feeling. It starts in the fingers. It's called rainbow finger. I don't know if you've seen it before. It's too many rainbow vegetables, so be calm. I'm just kidding, obviously. But this is actually what does happen if you change your dietary pattern. You begin shooting rainbows out of your hands. Last food category I want to share with you is a part of very new science. It's around fermented foods. Have you heard about this term, the microbiome? Any of the students up here heard about the microbiome? So that was weird in medicine, right? Forever we've been telling you to like kill bacteria, we've given you antibiotics, bacteria is bad, and it's like, let's just back that up, because actually, if you're looking right here at Drew Ramsey and you're thinking you're seeing a lot of Drew Ramsey cells, how many genes of Drew Ramsey are up here right now? It's like about 24,000 Drew Ramsey genes. I only have 24,000 parts. Like my Toyota Sienna has more parts than that. It's kind of strange. Now, how many bacterial genes are you looking at right now? Well, you're looking at about 2 million different bacterial genes. They're all here in my gut. Your gut, it turns out, is the center of your immune system. And one of the most important things we've come to understand in medicine is that we've really gotten it wrong when it comes to gut health. If you look at predictors of depression, dementia, what you find is that gut health is so important, and the way that you can improve your gut health is by eating more fermented foods, because you're eating live bacteria, and then feeding those bacteria with the right stuff, which mainly is plants. One of the reasons that our modern American diet has made us so ill is that it feeds the wrong types of bacteria. It feeds bacteria that make us overweight, and give us diabetes, and cause inflammation, as opposed to the bacteria that help us fight all those illnesses. Eating more traditional fermented foods, things like kimchi or yogurt or kefir, fermented, anybody know what kefir is? It's like a liquidy yogurt. It's the base of all the smoothies in my most recent cookbook because it's got so much bacteria in it. A lot of people might say, hey, take a probiotic. Probiotics have usually 10 to 50 billion CFUs, colony-forming units. A cup of kefir has about 1 trillion. So again, it's where traditional foods really can win. I call them the good bugs. And the idea on the good bugs is by seeding the gut with healthy bacteria and then feeding those good bacteria the right stuff, we have an incredible lever that we can pull in terms of our mental health and our brain health. And then the science is catching up with us. Last year, for the first time, there was a trial of giving people with depression probiotics that was quite positive. Found actually when you hospitalize patients for bipolar disorder, Johns Hopkins did a study where they gave half of the patients placebo, the other half they gave probiotics. They reduced the rehospitalization rate over 6 months by 90%. Now, no medicine has ever done that. That was probiotics added on to treatment as usual, just to say. But just to kind of, alert you that there's a new data signal coming out, that our gut health has so much to do with our brain health. One of the things that's been missing for so many of us are eating fermented foods. So can you eat to build a better brain? It's a question I started with. And as you think about your mental health 2.0, I hope that some of this data compels you. That if you focus on your dietary pattern and focus on nutrient density, really eating those foods that are great value, lots of bang for your buck in terms of nutrients. If you eat those rainbows, don't worry about the rainbow finger. I made that up to make you laugh. There's no concern. If you focus on the right fats, more olive oil and more seafood, again, focus on having great flavors and having a lot of fun, because if we're not eating with joyfulness, I don't think there's much point in eating. Don't be scared of fish. Remember the clammies, remember the mussels and the oysters. If you haven't tried those, work on incorporating them. And focus on those dietary patterns that the evidence is telling us really impact brain health. Eating more of those good bugs, more fermented foods and more plants, and then learning from history. We've done so much to mess up our diet. And what's so important right now is for you to realize that there's so much power of choice that you have to undo those changes, to go back to eating the traditional whole foods that we grow on our farm, that are grown on farms around the Midwest and around America. We can put the genie back in the bottle, and you can improve your brain health tremendously by improving the quality of your diet. It has been a real pleasure to be with you this morning as you think about wellness in 2020 and think about your intentions. I hope part of that is going to be taking care of that amazing, beautiful brain that you have. There's a miracle of possibilities inside your brain. There's actually more connections in your brain than there are cubic meters in the known universe. It's incredible. And I want you to feed that so your universe is expanding and expanding. I'm easy to reach. You can follow me on Instagram. That'll help my self-esteem tremendously. We have an Eat to Beat Depression e-course. If you're a clinician, we've offered the first ever nutritional psychiatry training for mental health clinicians. And then my books, Eat Complete, 50 Shades of Kale, and a Happiness Diet. Please do keep in touch. If we can be of help with you or your family's mental health, you can get to us at clinic@Ramsey, MD. But mostly, I hope you leave here with an intention. Improve your food, improve your mood, and take care of that wonderful brain that you have. And I wish you the very best in your wellness journey. Thank you all so much.